Watching any anime film in the 90s just gives me an indescribable feeling. Well, I guess you could say it's nostalgia. You can just feel the amount of love and dedication that went into those films. Vampire Hunter D: Bloodlust does not disappoint in that aspect. In fact, I say it sets a whole new bar for the film industry. This movie is set in the distant future where vampires rule the night, though not as much recently. Professional vampire hunters aren't just human. Vampires bred with humans and created their eventual downfall, a much more powerful hunter. This anime is dark, gritty, and of course, I wouldn't be reviewing it if it wasn't at least a little bit wholesome.
I just came here to keep a promise to an old friend of mine. She was afraid no one would mourn her death. I'm glad she was so wrong.
We are instantly thrown into a familiar-looking world that's had several thousands of years to evolve, with old traces of what seemed to be heavily technology-driven with a hint of a Western take. D, our half noble and half human, is the center of our story, and hot damn does he look like a badass. The whole vampire myth has been retold in so many different mediums and beaten to death at certain points. So, does Vampire Hunter D: Bloodlust just repeat the same old story that everyone else has already produced, or do we have something more unique on our hands? The creation of this film actually started in 1997. They had an unofficial release in 2000, but it was officially released in September of 2001. As some of you already know, this isn't the first Vampire Hunter D movie. The original was actually released back in 1985. They aren't really connected, and you don't need to watch the first one in order to watch Bloodlust, but that movie's also worth your time. The hype around the 1985 release was so immense that for years, the fans pushed for another film, and thus, Bloodlust was started 12 years later. Interestingly enough, English was the first language recorded for this film, and the Japanese dialogue finished not too long after. Madhouse produced it in Tokyo, but the final touches were made in California, and Madhouse has actually produced some of my favorite anime, like Hunter x Hunter. Togashi, we wish you the best, and take your time coming back. Thank you for everything you've given us. Both of these movies are based off of novels that Hideyuki Kikuchi wrote, who is also known for writing Demon City Shinjuku, Wicked City, and Ninja Scroll. What I love about him besides the obvious is that he's actually directed his own film adaptations and didn't allow someone else to do it. The man loves to stay busy. Bloodlust is centered around just what you'd expect for a vampire story. A woman has been kidnapped by a vampire noble named Baron Meyer Link. The desperate family of the kidnapped young woman hires a handful of professional hunters. Of course, D is one of them. He's reserved, witty, and oftentimes comes off as distant and cold. I could spend an entire video talking about him, but I'll do my best to keep it short. In one of the novels, The Rose Princess, D was described perfectly. A black shape passed her. As the long coat headed towards the flames, he looked like some gorgeous idol of a god of war trimmed in crimson lotus blossoms. No one knows how old D is, but it's estimated he could be between 5 and 10,000 years old. It's rumored that his father is Dracula, also known as the Sacred Ancestor among the nobles. The Sacred Ancestor was attempting to make the perfect hybrid of nobles and vampires in hopes to preserve their nobility, thus creating D, a Dhampir, and much more than he ever thought he would create. Dhampirs across the world are wildly feared and not trusted even when it comes to humans hiring them. This is both because they fear that which they do not understand, but also because Dhampirs in the past have been known to turn on the very people they are hired by due to their own bloodlust. D is often seen as mistreated and shunned with the general population, but it doesn't seem to faze him in the least. The other hired team of hunters are all human. They're called the Marcus Brothers. They're noted to be highly skilled and ruthless hunters among the others. What sets them apart from the rest is how their parents use genetic augmentation techniques, which helps it make an even playing field when fighting against vampires and any other strong foe. The family consists of Borgoff, Kyle, Grove, Noltz, and Leela. Clearly D has some major competition here, but as the story unfolds, things aren't as simple as they appear. The clock is ticking and their target is on the run. It seems like an easy task, but Meyer Link refuses to allow this to be the case. He throws the famous Barbaroi clan at the hunters in hopes of keeping them off his trail. Barbaroi is a town full of mutants and demons that have been breeding here for over 10,000 years. Though they are in debt to Dee's father, they've been paid by Meyer Link to hold the hunters back. This gives us a better glimpse into the supernatural world and lets us know it's not just vampires that lurk in the shadows. Between Dee and the exceptionally skilled Hunter family, this story has perfect pacing along with some of the most beautiful scenes you'll ever see in an anime. I really can't say enough wonderful things about this film. With a unique take on vampire storytelling and characters, let's see how the animation holds up. I don't even know where to start here. Bloodlust is a work of art in itself. Each scene is gracefully crafted and filled with so much love and care. Yoshitaka Amano actually is responsible for the artwork in the novels, which prompted the creators to keep Amano's character design for Dee in Bloodlust. This helps me understand where a lot of inspiration came from during some of these breathtaking scenes. The brief glimpses we're given paint a picture of what the offspring of a high fantasy novel and spaghetti western might look like, with desolate, sand-covered small ranch towns sharing the landscape with what could pass for a recreation of turn-of-the-century London. I catch myself often not paying attention to the characters, but the world forming around them, showing off how it's been around much longer and will outlive them for a millennia to come. Noticing little things like how the horses are actually cyborg horses. The action scenes are fluid and dreamlike, and the attention to detail is something we don't see so much these days. Each scene appears to be handcrafted with the utmost care, right down to the characters you only see on screen for a moment. I feel like it's a mix of Western steampunk and high fantasy if I had to make a sad attempt at explaining it. The last time I watched it, there were certain parts of the animation that I thought I could screenshot and tell some normal person that it's art from a famous fine art show and they would believe me. Okay, I think I might be being a little bit dramatic, but you're welcome. The soundtrack is creepy, emotional, and has that professional touch that leaves you feeling like this is a cinematic masterpiece. It helps feed the world around you and immerse you into every scene. It's dramatic as hell if you listen to it outside of the film, and I freaking love it. The animation and soundtrack are undeniable pillars to this film's success on the big screen. The dub has some incredible voice actors and is 110% worth your time. Each actor helps immerse you into their world that they've created with some truly gritty and top-notch acting. They have so many famous English voice actors ranging from the woman who did Bobby Hill's voice, Pamela Adlon,
That's my
bounty.
I don't know you!
to John Rafter Lee, who's also known, well, for freaking everything. The sub is just as good and brings just as many talented actors. Hideyuki Tanaka is Dee and is widely known from One Piece, Metal Gear, and a huge list of other anime and video games. I never got the opportunity to actually watch it in Japanese until recently, and of course I really enjoyed it. I don't think there's a proper suggestion here. I suggest whatever you prefer to start off with, but make sure you give the other language a try too. The film is just a peek into the world that Kawajiri created. He's written well over 37 novels so far, alongside a manga which ended up getting cancelled, a comic, an audio drama series, and of course, a video game. The novels are absolutely worth your time. They describe Dee's world in such rich detail and give you so much more insight than you ever thought you needed. Kawajiri also wrote some spin-off series, one of them being The Noble Grey Lancer, which takes place 5,000 years before Dee's story and dives deeper into the noble history. You may find yourself completely satisfied with the film, but if you have that extra itch, try out some of these books because they are totally worth your time. This movie is an absolute masterpiece in every way. From its hand-drawn artwork to its handsome character building and story, you really can't go wrong with this one. Dee comes off as a cold and callous being, but through his actions, he shows us how much he cares about the world around him and what happens to it. He leads by action, not by words. Most of us are just too scared to take action. We sit and think about what we think we would do in certain situations and dream about the day we actually do them, but Dee's a textbook definition of do or do not, there is no try. And so, how does this stand up against the best friend rating? We didn't see him with any companions or family for that matter, but his whole drive is to help those in need, the underdog, the human child who can't protect himself, and to rid this world of those vile nobles. He's the friend we wish we all could have, or even be for that matter. Dee, you get the ultra best friends rating. Thanks for inspiring us to do and be better.
I may be just an old fool now, stranger, but I could never forget a face like yours.
and I'll never forget what you done for me back then.
What?
That's right. I was one of them.
Accessing this show after it's been out for, well, a couple decades might prove to be a little bit difficult. You can find the Blu-ray on Amazon, and honestly, I highly recommend watching it that way. And of course, the manga and the books you can find on Amazon or actually Dark Horse. Hey everyone, thanks for sticking around and watching this. These videos have been super fun for me so far. If you want to talk more, suggest something, or even tell me how I'm pronouncing things horribly incorrectly, you can reach me on Twitter. Both of these movies are based off the novel that, the obvious is that he's directed his own film